Well, now I'm joined by financial commentator Bernard Hickey from interest.co.nz. Bernard, thanks very much for coming in. The government's put Allan Hubbard himself and his wife under statutory management. Can you just explain how unusual this is?
Well, this is an extraordinary move. It hasn't been done by the government for 7 years, and to put the people, rather than the company, into statutory management shows how concerned the government was. They say they did it to prevent fraud and to prevent other losses of money. So the government had considered this very carefully. Remember, the initial complaint that triggered this happened at the end of February, so it's been 3 months. The government have been in discussions with Mr Hubbard. They decided to take this extraordinary step after a lot of consideration. Remember, this was a step taken by the Commerce Minister, no doubt after serious legal advice, and Mr Hubbard may think that he's been unfairly treated, but the government has decided this is the right thing to do.
And they must surely have some pretty strong evidence, or believe they've got some strong evidence to take such a step. What exactly are they accusing, the SFO accusing Mr Hubbard of doing?
Well, the SFO hasn't formally accused Mr Hubbard of anything yet, but they are investigating the irregularities in the paperwork behind Allan Securities, which was set up as a contributory mortgage fund in the 1970s, but has morphed into something else, which Simon Power, the minister, described as a place where the Hubbards were taking money from investors and lending it to charitable trusts they were involved in, different to what the investors believed. I spoke to an Allan Securities investor today. He had no idea that the money was going into charitable trusts, and rightly asked the question, what's going on here?
And that's where a prospectus would have been the normal procedure.
Yes. Well, Mr Hubbard believed that his investors were what they call habitual investors, that they didn't require a prospectus.
No.
But the people I spoke to believed that their accounting firm, which is Hubbard Churcher, was doing the right thing.
Is this naivety? Because Mr Hubbard's surely a very shrewd businessman.
Well, it's tough to know yet until we see the details, and the Serious Fraud Office will be investigating those. You can see from the track, the exclusive interview that TV1 had, that Mr Hubbard is an elderly man. He is on dialysis 3 times a week. He is under enormous stress, and we'll see what comes out of this. It was 3 months, remember, since the initial complaint. For him to say we needed more time, the government obviously didn't buy that.
And you don't think the government would have had an alternative?
No, because remember that the government is the one with the most to lose here. It has guaranteed the money behind South Canterbury Finance. It has already provisioned more than $500 million in losses, mostly, most believe, for South Canterbury Finance. Although Allan Securities investors are not guaranteed here, it's the government which has most to lose and has decided to take this fairly drastic action.
Also, the people with quite a lot to lose will be the rural community as well around Timaru. Is that right? Is Allan Securities particularly based in that area or active in that area?
Over 400 farmers in Otago and Canterbury have invested about $100 million in Allan Securities. More than 30,000 people have invested more than $1 billion in South Canterbury Finance. If the South Canterbury Finance empire, if you like, and there are many companies around that, and including Mr Hubbard's personal interests, were to fall over or to implode, this would be a major blow for the South Island rural community and the rural business scene. And that's why everyone's watching it so closely and why this has generated such shock in the community down there.
Is shock the major reaction, or is there real fear as well?
And disbelief and anger at what the government has done. You saw there in the track how people believed that Mr Hubbard had been hard done by. He himself came out today and said that this was a misguided move by the government, but this was a considered move by the government, acting to protect the interests of taxpayers generally.
Just finally, we've tried to establish that South Canterbury Finance is not impacted at this stage, but what do you think this means for the company? It's a well-known brand across the nation.
That's right. Mr Hubbard owns South Canterbury Finance and over the last few months has been trying to bring in an equity investor. Interestingly, in his statement today, he said that he expected to come up with a deal before the end of the month. That's just a few days away. That has to happen, otherwise the future of South Canterbury Finance is in severe doubt. Because it's guaranteed, it needs to convince investors to roll over their investments until next year. The danger is it's delaying its day of Armageddon just for a year. And the question now is, can South Canterbury survive without a strong Allan Hubbard and without a government guarantee? And I think there is severe doubt about that now.
OK, thanks, Bernard. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. That's Bernard Hickey of interest.co.nz.